Hi, I'm Joe Abraham. And before co-founding Intellicampus, I spent 6 years as managing partner of an award-winning higher education consulting firm, where my team and I logged tens of thousands of hours inside institutions in higher ed, from flagship R1 universities to small rural community colleges. And we were working at the intersection of strategy and systems and governance and execution. And across every campus, we saw a common pattern: fragmented data, disconnected workflows, governance kind of been layered on after the fact, and more recently, AI being introduced on top of all that fragmentation. But as you can probably imagine, AI doesn't work well in a legacy, fragmentation-heavy environment. What higher ed has needed for a long time is one enterprise-grade foundation to deploy AI on, one that unifies and protects your data, one that embeds governance at the data layer, one that scales institution-wide so you're not doing one-off AI, and actually improves the student and staff outcomes. That's why we built Intellicampus on Servicenow, the same enterprise platform of which the NVIDIA CEO recently said this.
You know, because of our original vision, NVIDIA runs AI agents on Servicenow. And I made the observation, and I told you this, and of course you knew this, but I told you just as a third party watching the world of enterprise AI, Servicenow is destined to be the best platform, the operating system of enterprise AI agents.
So we took the platform trusted by 92%, I think it is, of the Fortune 500 and made it higher education ready. And that's the architecture I want to walk you through today. Now, a modern university runs 80 to 120 different systems. We'll call that your current legacy data layer or software layer, right? In your legacy layer, you've got things like your SIS, your learning management system, your CRM, your advising system, HR finance. I mean, the list goes on and on, but you get the point. Each of these systems holds a fragment of institutional reality, but no one system contains the full institutional context. So, enabling AI inside any one of these, or buying AI tools that sit at this level, siloed off, at best you're just going to optimize that fragment, but it doesn't create institutional intelligence. Institutional intelligence requires reasoning across the entire network. This is where enterprise architecture matters. Intellicampus provides a single architecture and a single data model that sits above these systems of record. Through Integration Hub and zero-copy data, we give a unified context to all the data sitting in rows and tables and relational databases without forcing you having to replace any one of these systems. So your SIS, for example, stays where it is. There's no need to replace and buy a new SIS for $20 to $100 million, hoping to have a more modern experience. You keep what you have and start to move the data into a smarter layer. We'll just call this your smart data fabric. And once you have this layer here, you can start to see data flowing through zero copy into your data fabric and starting to connect. You start to combine data from each of these systems through a globally adopted higher education data model that we've built into your instance. So, enrollment data, advising data that sits disconnected in these systems starts to combine. This isn't about a data lake. This is smart data fabric. And that creates a system of intelligence right above your legacy systems. But this data fabric alone by itself isn't even enough. Your data is still trapped in legacy rows and columns, just now connected to each other. And that limits AI significantly. Institutional reasoning requires modeling relationships between the data, and this is where graph technology starts to matter. So for example, you've got information about a student here and here and here and here and here. So when you start to connect that data, a student to the course they're enrolled in, the course to the professor that's involved in that course, the student and their financial bill, the dorm they live in, the course of study they're in, the student activities they're involved in, and you start to build the relationship between the data, now you've positioned yourself for better AI. Relational databases show rows. Knowledge graphs start to model relationships. And that's what enables contextual intelligence. And Intellicampus comes pre-built with the graph technology you need. But this isn't just some one-off graph technology or something built from open source libraries. It's actually sourced with higher education's unique needs for three things: memory, governance, and security in mind. Now, understand that large language models that would want to come and talk to this graph data are inherently inference engines, which basically means they don't have much of a memory. They don't inherently maintain longitudinal memory of a student or any piece of data for that matter. And without memory, if we apply AI right here, it would be episodic. It would be one-off. It could deliver different answers at different times. But higher education is developmental, right? Students evolve academically, financially, behaviorally. Interventions accumulate over time. Policies interact over time. Trajectories shift over time. Over time, the students' grades update. They have more LMS data. They get involved in different programs. They may change their major. All these changes need to be stored somewhere. And so that's why we built a memory layer. We call it IntelliGraph. But think of it as essentially the ongoing institutional memory as these knowledge graphs expand. This transforms AI from a conversational assistant at best into a dynamic institutional nerve center of sorts. But let's talk data governance, because again, it's still too early to put AI on top of this, because we have to ask the question, who's touching the data, when are they touching it, and how? Now, the knowledge graph technology we use in Intellicampus was sourced specifically because of its data governance capabilities. Actually, it's the same technology used to build graph data on Medicare patients. And I'm sure you'll agree, HIPAA compliance is slightly more complicated than FERPA compliance. But put simply, what happens is your data at the individual data level gets cryptographically locked down into what's called a smart data object. So every piece of data in your system that's going through the smart data fabric has a cryptographic lock on it, so that smart data objects, because they're based in cryptography, embed access policy, purpose limitations, provenance, audit traceability. So governance travels with the data, and this way AI can reason broadly without weakening institutional control. And for high stakes data in higher education, tamper-evident integrity becomes foundational. And I can assure you, for most companies offering you AI, data governance is an afterthought. And at best, it's layered in at the legacy row and column level. In an AI future, institutional integrity must be provable at the individual data object level. And this is the way to do it at scale, and it's at the very heart of our architecture. So now that we have our data graphed, we have the memory, we have our governance, everything locked down. I'll put this right here. This is your governance layer all the way along. Now we can start to think about, okay, what does the agentic AI and the workflow automation layer look like? Because now you can have your agentic AI and your workflow automation do its magic once your data is in this place. Now, rather than talk more technology, let's just make this super tangible, right? Let's do a use case that we're all familiar with. A student wants to drop a class. Sounds simple, but inside the institution, you know it's anything but simple, right? Dropping a class can affect full-time status, financial aid eligibility, satisfactory academic progress, athletic eligibility. Maybe they're international students, so you got the visa compliance issues, housing requirements, billing situations, scholarship constraints, right? Time to degree. Today, that process is handled here and very manually in a very fragmented way. People running around like chickens with their head cut off. It's a source of tremendous friction, both for staff and for students. At one of our R1 institutions we're working with, add drop activity takes up 25% of an entire department's day. And that's dozens and dozens and dozens of people. The registrar then has to update the schedule. Financial aid has to recalculate stuff manually. Billing people adjust things later. Admissions may or may not be, an advisor may or may not be notified. Compliance risks start to surface later when reports are run. But look at that same situation through an AI native architecture. Let's say a student initiates a request. They go to their Intellicampus agent, who's called Sophia, and say, Sophia, I think I need to drop this calculus class. Sophia, the orchestrating agent, then starts to activate the use of a series of specialist agents who are experts in certain things. For example, a degree audit agent that can start to look at how this add drop situation is going to affect program progression. A financial aid agent to start looking at recalculating eligibility for real time. A billing agent to basically look at what impact this is going to have on the student's bill and projecting any kind of tuition adjustments. A compliance agent that will look at verifying full-time status, visa impact, athletic rules. And an advisor coordination, let's say, agent that can send workflows alerting the right advisors, the right professors of the information they need in the moment. Each agent, each specialist agent is operating within embedded policy, each accessing only purpose-authorized data. Each logs its reasoning path for auditability. Sophia, the orchestrating agent, is then able to take that information, synthesize the outcome, and say, hey, here are the academic implications, here are the financial implications, here are the compliance considerations, and here's the recommended next steps. And if you want, Sophia will orchestrate the workflows, because we're built on Servicenow, to manage the case with staff from start to finish, like a true concierge, a one-stop for student services. And by the way, this whole thing I just described to you took place in seconds, not hours or weeks. So instead of discovering risk weeks later when we run a report, the institution can act in real time. My friend, Sophia is not a chatbot or a conversational agent. It's institutional reasoning and action made available 24/7, 365. Now, in the early days, you'll want more humans involved in this loop, right? Checking on the reasoning of the agent, approving its actions. That's no problem. You can configure the workflows for that. But over time, and only when your institution chooses to do so, you can make data-driven, evidence-based decisions to have the agents do more and more. Just update the workflow for more automation. And by doing this, you're going to start freeing up humans to do the really human-centric work. In all the time I've been with institutions, I've yet to find one where the staff feel that they have all the time in the world to do the meaningful work. On the contrary, most of them feel overwhelmed, overworked, and unable to spend time with students and matters they really should be focused on. Agentic AI, with your orchestrating agent, when it's done right, at enterprise scale, is what frees up people's time to do the meaningful work. Now, understand that all this data dissection, reasoning, and all this orchestration is happening underneath a data layer, and it's all feeding one experience layer. Which means that whether the student is on their phone or whether they're sitting at their desktop computer, they have one prompt, very much like a ChatGPT or their Uber app, hundreds of processes happening at the same time, but one interface, one single pane of glass that they're interacting with. So at this experience layer, an executive can ask, hey, what's the connection between cost of instruction and program outcomes in our math department? Which alumni are more likely to give if we have to raise funds for a new athletic field? Specialist agents go do the work, dig up the information from the knowledge graph, feed it back to the orchestrating agent who can reason and start to answer that question. The complexity has been moved down, the intelligence has been moved up. So if you just understood what I shared with you in just the last few minutes, your mind is likely starting to race with ideas and use cases this architecture now unlocks for you. Maybe you're thinking about how data from your school district of high school's student data can be turned into knowledge graphs on each incoming student, so they can be agentically matched to the most ideal course for them, the right professors for them, the right schedule, even the right campus activities. Maybe you're thinking about how data from the LMS sitting way down here and the SIS, the housing system, and student activities repositories can tell a much more relevant 360-degree story of the student in real time, activating early alerts that you design, that you control, as opposed to some overpriced SaaS black box where you have no idea why it's raising the alerts and why it's doing what it's doing. Or you may be thinking of retention and completion strategies already written into your strategic plan that agentic AI can free up people's times to actually go and do. Because now that you understand how data fabric and knowledge graph with intelligence and agentic workflows operate, you can start thinking about how a learner's knowledge graph can keep accumulating over time, even after they graduate, and improve your alumni engagement and create more personalized and effective communications. What about micro-credentials, lifelong learning? There are literally hundreds of use cases and thousands of experiences you can design with this core architecture under the hood. And that brings me to the last thing I want to share with you, and that has to do with how we've architected the platform. We want to give you a low-code, no-code environment. Servicenow calls it Agent Studio, where you can literally build your own AI agents for use cases you care about, maybe even using student workers. You don't have to wait for our product development team to put that next big idea out there. Now, we'll always build out-of-the-box agents because we're working with our design partner schools and they're asking us for stuff. But once you have Intellicampus installed, you can innovate on it as you see fit. You can even bring any AI agent system in that you want. So, for example, at this layer, you're not locked into us. If you love Anthropic or OpenAI or Gemini or whatever is going to be the big thing 5 years from now, ServiceNow's agent-to-agent communication module is built so that external agents can talk to internal agents as though they're all internal agents. So there's no vendor lock-in, no proprietary AI system to hold you and force you into. We are infrastructure. You can plug and unplug different things as they go. So when you replace your SIS, it's just a connector. When you replace your CRM, it's just a connector. If you decide you don't need an advising platform for $400,000 a year anymore, because agentic AI is doing it, you just unplug it. This is infrastructure. You plug and unplug as you need to. See, our goal is to provide you something breakthrough and powerful, a governed AI innovation sandbox, an enterprise-grade infrastructure within secure architectural boundaries and rock-solid data governance built in. But it's a place where you can build new agents, model new workflows, experiment safely, and we don't want to be the bottleneck to your innovation. We just want to be the platform that enables it. So friends, I would say to you this in closing. Your institution is at a fork in the road, whether you recognize it or not. You can spend the next 3 to 5 years at this bottom layer, innovating here, replacing systems, calling it modernization, replacing system after system, or maybe even buying some AI that goes in any one of these systems. And what you're going to get is you'll spend the next 3 to 5 years here, but you'll stay in legacy world, doing legacy things, getting legacy outcomes. I can guarantee you one thing, nothing about your student experience or staff productivity and their engagement or institutional outcomes is going to change. 5 or 10 years from now, you'll look pretty close to what you've been doing today. And proof in case of that is the last 10 to 20 years of SaaS investments we've all made and legacy technology that's sitting right here. I want to instead invite you to take a smarter path. I invite you to put your focus and energy and resources into the data and AI workflow level and the experience level. This is where the real innovation opportunity is and where the real digital transformation is already happening. Now, if your institution isn't ready in 2026, you've got a lot of other fires to put out, that's understandable. Just learn with us, follow us, stay in community, and stay informed for when you are ready to take action. But if you already have the institutional mandate to innovate using AI, improve the student experience, improve staff and institutional outcomes, maybe even instructions to replace a big system down here because people think that's what's going to be the big change, for a fraction of that cost, I'd like to personally invite you to join us as a design partner institution in 2026 when that opportunity is still available. Take advantage of the shared intelligence from the cohort schools we're working with. Take advantage of deep discounts both Servicenow and us are offering in 2026, and be one of the leaders of the real digital transformation in our industry. Make it a great day.